Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall meeting with Congresswoman Diana DeGette. We truly appreciate you taking the time to join us. My name is Joe Middleton, and I am Congresswoman DeGette's Chief of Staff. I will be moderating tonight's call. For those of you unfamiliar with the teleconference format, the Congresswoman will kick things off here very shortly. After that, we'll turn it over to you all to take any questions you may have. If at any time, starting right now, you would like to ask a question during this evening's town hall, please press *3. Again, that's *3, and you will be transferred to a member of our staff who will put you into the queue for questions. Thank you again for taking the time to join us this evening. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Congresswoman Diana DeGette.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everybody. It's Diana. And I thought it'd be a good time for me to talk with you and kind of let you know what I make of all the chaos that's going on and what I'm doing to represent you in this time. It's not a good time for our country, but it's a time that we all need to stand together and push back and fight back. So anyway, I'm going to say a few words about what I think is going on, and then I'm going to try to take as many of your questions as I can. So I know it seems like it's been about 10 years since Donald Trump was sworn in on January 20th, but it's only been a month. In that period of time, he has tried to institute a funding freeze. He has tried to end birthright citizen, which is clearly in our Constitution. He's had an assault on career civil servants that keeps going on to this day. He's demonized the trans community. He has said he's going to try to eliminate the Department of Education. And then a bunch of silly stuff and stuff that's just stupid. He said he was renaming the Gulf of Mexico. He said he was going to eliminate paper straws. He said he was going to annex Canada as our 51st state, and on and on and on. And of course, none of this chaos has done anything to reduce the prices that Americans are facing right now. Egg prices, of course, have gone up since he was president, if you can find them. Gas prices have gone over $3 a gallon here in Denver. And then last month, inflation went up again. So this is just a bunch of chaos, and I think you're going to see it worse for the economy. So there's many disturbing things about this. I think the most disturbing thing is how Donald Trump has basically, while he's playing golf and going to the Super Bowl and all this, he's put Elon Musk, who is an unelected, unvetted billionaire, in charge of this new agency that is not authorized by Congress, DOGE, of course. And Elon Musk and these 20-something-year-old kids are basically trying to rampage over the federal government and including getting access to our IRS data, our personal health data, and everything else. And so this is really disturbing, to say the least, alarming. And so I just want to say to you what I've been saying to everybody: most of what they are doing is illegal. And what that means is that the courts are our first line of defense against this. And I want to let you know kind of what the courts are doing to let you know it's actually working. So there have been now 74 cases that have been filed in the courts challenging what Elon Musk and Donald Trump have done, because it's blatantly illegal. And I can talk more about that later. As all of you know, I'm a lawyer. I can talk more about that later if you want me to. But in almost every situation where a court case has been filed and where the plaintiffs sought an injunction to stop transactions, they have been granted. There were two exceptions. one of them was DeGette accessing records, and another one was a lawsuit filed by some of the unions. But both of those cases were not decided on the merits. They were decided because in the one case, the court said that the union didn't have the legal authority to file the suit. So now some individuals are filing suit. And in the Doge case, the judge said she wanted to hear more facts. And so I believe that we will be hearing a lot more, and I think we're going to win those cases too. We started a litigation working group in Congress, in the House, to support the legal efforts, both to help give advice to our attorneys general, like Phil Weiser, who's doing a great job, and he is entering into these lawsuits, but also to file amicus briefs with the court to let them know the Democrats in Congress do not support this. We are also pressuring our Republican colleagues. You know, our Republican colleagues have been noticeably silent with all of this, and we're telling them all, and we're urging them all, and we're telling them all, your constituents do not support this. And so we're pushing back at that level with the litigation. There's a place that Congress is about to come into play in a really dramatic fashion, and I want to explain this to all of you because it's kind of procedural, but it's going to have a huge impact. As you might recall, in December, we did a continuing resolution that continued the funding for the government under the budget that was passed before with the Biden administration and with a bipartisan agreement of funding. We continued that funding until March 14th. So it's going to be up again. And the Republicans have said, once again, they tried this in December, but the Democrats blocked it. They're going to try to increase the debt ceiling by $4 trillion in order to fund tax cuts for the wealthy, the extension of the Trump tax cuts from 2017. And we have said, the Democrats have said, we are happy to work with you to keep the government open, but we are not going to vote for increasing the debt ceiling so that you can use that to pay for more tax cuts for billionaires. We're not going to do that. If you want to work with us to have a common sense budget, like we have, by the way, the whole last 2 years, they had to work with us, and we were able to get common sense funding. But if they either try to do that or if they try to have deep cuts in that continuing resolution, we're not going to go along with their MAGA agenda. None of us are. And so we'll see what they decide to do with that. They're going to have to work with Democrats if they want to pass their budget because they only have a 1 to 3 vote majority, and they have wide disagreement in their caucus. So the second thing that's about to happen is the Republicans want to do a budget to allow them to have deep cuts to the budget. And some of you might have seen the House Budget Committee passed a resolution last week. No Democrats voted for that. Here's what the Republican budget had last week: a $4.5 trillion tax cut for billionaires. And they said that they wanted to find cuts in the rest of spending to pay for that. Now, some of you know I am on the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House. The Energy and Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over everything relating to the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. So what that means is that all of healthcare is under our purview, telecommunications, energy, environment, consumer protection, all of those things, EPA, those are all under our jurisdiction. The Republican leadership and the Republican budget said they wanted to find, in my committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, $880 billion with a B dollars in cuts from our committee jurisdiction. And what they're targeting is they're targeting Medicaid. And frankly, we are standing firm against any cuts to Medicaid. In Denver, in my congressional district, we have 122,000 Medicaid recipients who rely on this for their health care. And just to put it into perspective, I told you they want to have a $880 billion cut in my committee, but Medicaid, the entire Medicaid program is only $800 billion. So you can see right there, they're not going to be able to get that kind of money. And even Donald Trump told them he didn't want to cut Medicaid. And the reason he told them he didn't want to cut Medicaid is he knows that many of his voters are getting Medicaid benefits either through the Affordable Care Act or through the Medicaid extension that we had after COVID. And so you're going to see me, something new with me this Congress. I'm now the ranking Democrat on the Health Subcommittee of Energy and Commerce. All of the hearings on that are going to come through my subcommittee, and I'm working with the members of my subcommittee to put forward a strong resistance to that, to let people know what this is going to mean for Americans. Also, they're talking about cutting $230 billion in SNAP benefits, and that's food stamps and other food benefits. I just want to say we have 31,000 SNAP recipients in Denver. Now, all these cuts that they want to do, it doesn't do anything to lower costs because of the tax cuts that they want to do for the billionaires. And so I'm going to fight very, very hard against that too. So that's kind of what's going on with the budget, and that's where you're going to see a lot of this shifting to Congress. And all of the Republicans are going to be put on the spot with this, because this is not why people voted for Donald Trump, and they are not going to want to see these cuts. Couple more things I want to talk about before I open it to questions. One of them is, what is the issue with migrants? We've been getting a lot of calls about that. As you know, Denver and Colorado have laws which prohibit the police from sharing migrant status, and also Denver's ordinances prohibit local police from cooperating with federal officers on civil migrant cases. I support those, and I've talked to the mayor, and I also met last week with the city council talking about how we can work together on this. My understanding is that I'm sure all of you saw, we had these raids a couple of weeks ago by ICE in multiple places across Colorado. We have been trying to get information from ICE about how many people. They said they were only going after convicted criminals, but in some of these apartment complexes, they were going door to door with a number of federal agents and knocking on every door, which is, number one, a violation of people's rights. And number two, it's totally inefficient with our limited federal resources. So we've been trying to find out how many people they rounded up from this. They won't tell us. And our allies, they won't tell our allies. They won't tell the people at the city or anybody else in the delegation. We're continuing to monitor the situation. And that brings me up to the last thing I want to say in my opening remarks, and that's this, is see something, say something. For all of these issues, the attention that the constituents have been putting on this is really helpful to the pushback against Trump and Musk. And we've been getting thousands of phone calls every week in our office, both in Denver and in D.C., from people who are telling us what's going on. This is, and by the way, in case you haven't called me, we always have somebody who answers the phone during business hours. I think that's really important. When you call in, you get to talk to somebody. If everybody's on the phone and it goes to voicemail, we return those calls. So I know a lot of politicians don't do that, but I feel quite strongly that we need to get your information and we need to help you. So if you see, so one thing we're trying to figure out, aside from this migrant situation, how widespread it is, we're also trying to figure out if the Trump and Musk folks are complying with the court orders. For example, at first they froze all the funding, like at Anschutz, they froze all the funding that was going to biomedical research. And we're working with them every day because the court ordered them to release that funding. And so so for funding that was ordered to be released, we're trying to make sure that it's actually coming through. And if it's not, then we can start pestering the agencies and trying to get that funding to come through. But also, we need to know which workers are losing their jobs, what's happening, so that we can push back. And if you don't need to call my office, you can go on. My phone number, and I'll say this again at the end. It's 303-844-4988. You can also go on my website. It's DeGette.house.gov. Also, and on that website, you can sign up for my newsletter. We send this out once a week when we're in session, and it has links to things you will want to know. We do not use it for campaign purposes, and we do not give it to anybody or sell it to anybody. We just use it for the people who sign up for it. But you can find out from the newsletter what's going on. Also, like I did during the pandemic, the last big crisis we had, I've been doing videos from time to time, kind of letting people know what's going on and what I'm doing, so that you can have a sort of sense from the field what's going on. Also, I think this is really important. On my website, we have a Know Your Rights section. And this is a section where people can go if they need to know their legal rights, like for migration or other people. And it's really important that you know that and that you share that with people. And we're also working with a lot of the different migrant groups and other groups around Denver, so we can be sure people know what they should and shouldn't be doing. So that's sort of a capsule of everything that's going on, and I think I'm gonna turn it back to you, Joe, and then I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. Well, before I do, let me just say one more thing. There was a great big march in Denver yesterday and across the country of resistance. We have to keep this up. We have to keep this resistance up at every level, through protests in the streets, through inquiries to agencies and demanding of agencies, to lawsuits like have been filed, and then also, of course, to your elected officials fighting for you and pushing back against these abuses and trying to stop them. So all of this at every level, that's what we're going to have to do in this crisis, and that's the way we're going to get through, because I, for one, am not going to give up our constitutional democracy to this guy. I'm not going to do it, and we're going to save it in the end, but it's going to take a lot of work from all of us. Joe?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for those comments. Very helpful. We will now begin the question and answer portion of tonight's town hall. As a reminder, if you have a question for Congresswoman DeGette, please push *3, and again, that's *3 right now, and you will be transferred to one of our staff members to be added into the queue for questions. Now, let's take our first question from Elizabeth in Denver.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello. Elizabeth is here.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Is this Congresswoman DeGette?
Yeah.
Hello.
Go for it.
If your audience will bear with me, my question is actually a three-parter. Each part being slightly different, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. The first part concerns Mr. Trump's threats to end Medicaid, and something that was promised that would never happen while he was up doing his campaign. And I'm on a program that actually is part and parcel of the Social Security reform. And it's a community and home-based care program because I'm an invalid. And if I cannot tell by reading the law who really has ultimate control over whether that program continues if they stop Medicaid, because if you look at the law, it came from Social Security, but yet it's CMS that's doing the administration. So if they got rid of Medicaid, would all of the home and community-based caregivers be out of work, and would all of the patients be on the street?
Okay, why don't you ask all three of your questions, and then I'll answer them all. Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Why don't you ask me your other two questions, and then I'll answer them all.
Okay, the second one would be with a Republican Congress, a Republican executive branch, do we really have a shot at defeating these executive orders when they come down, when he was able to defeat 36 lawsuits that were filed against him for things that he did that were illegal during his campaign?
Okay, that's a great question. What's your third one?
Third one would be a rather small one. I saw a podcast a couple of days ago, and it was done by Mr. Musk. And basically, one of the points they made was that Mr. Musk contributed $270 million to Mr. Trump's campaign. But then right after he was inaugurated, one of his companies, and I believe it was SpaceX, was afforded $150 billion with a B to that company. And I'm wondering if that was information.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all of those good points. Let me just go through them because they really encapsulate what a lot of people are wondering. First of all, these threats to end Medicaid. So, as I said, Donald Trump claims he's not going to end Medicaid, but this budget resolution that the House Republicans have put forward would cause us to cut so much money that it would really have to practically eliminate Medicaid. And you gave the perfect example of the kinds of things that Medicaid is funding. It's funding care programs for the disabled, for senior citizens, but it's also helping fund insurance for everybody else. It's not clear who under the Republicans' proposal, it's not clear who would be administering this particular program, because we haven't seen the legislation. We've just seen these general budget limits. But once you start getting into the details, they're going to have to cut almost everything in Medicaid. And that is not, here's the thing is, that is not going to be popular, and many Republicans are already privately expressing their dismay at this. And this is why, if you have friends in these Republicans' districts, I in particular, I want to say in Gabe Evans' district, Colorado's 8th congressional district, he's the new member up there, and he's a Republican. He's on the Energy and Commerce Committee. So if people are worried about their Medicaid recipients, these are people who live up north of Denver, Commerce City, Brighton, that area. They should call Congressman Evans' office and other Republicans and tell them what Medicaid means to them. Because I think in the end, we've saved Medicaid in the past when the Republicans tried to cut it. I think we can save it again because Medicaid is wildly popular because it helps millions and millions of Americans. With respect to your second question about the Republican Congress and executive, do we have a shot on these executive orders? Remember that on the executive orders, they are so illegal under the U.S. Constitution that the courts are beginning to stop them. And so far, pretty much all of the lawsuits where they've tried to get a temporary order have been able to stop it. They were able to stop the cuts to USAID. They were able to stop the cuts to many other programs, but people are trying to get into court. And I think the most important lawsuit that they're going to have is the lawsuit that says DOGE is not an actual government agency because it was never approved by Congress. And so, and Elon Musk has never been approved by anybody except for Donald Trump, and he should not be cutting. He and his 20-something-year-old kids should not be cutting all of these programs. They shouldn't be firing people, and they shouldn't be getting access to people's private information. I will note that that all of these agencies and all of this funding, the reason why it's illegal for them to be cutting it, they were all approved by Congress. And under Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress, if it's approved, this is longstanding court precedent, Donald Trump can't cut agencies that were approved by Congress. Congress would have to do that. Now, Elizabeth, this is different from the lawsuits from his campaign against him personally, because this is a different part of the Constitution. This is the authority of Congress to fund the government and create the agencies. And I think that they're going to have a lot of success in that. Finally, with respect to your third question about Elon Musk, this is why Elon Musk is not a legitimate representative of our government. He's the richest man on earth. He was a huge campaign donor to Donald Trump. I heard $300 million that he donated, and he has all of these government contracts. And if, by the way, I know you'll be shocked, none of those government contracts have been cut by DOGE. So what we're doing in Congress, we are filing, the Democrats are filing legislation, and we're also bringing this up at committee hearings that he's got a conflict of interest. He shouldn't be having any, and I think there's some lawsuits on this too. He shouldn't be having any contracts with the federal government, and we're going to push for this until they quit, because this is something the American people do not agree with at all. I've seen polling on it. They don't think that Donald Trump should be able to appoint his biggest campaign donor to then get a whole bunch of government tax cuts. So we're going to have to work through this. Okay, Joe, next question.
Thank you so much. Next, we have a call from Carol in Congress Park.
Hey, Carol.
Hey, thank you so much for hosting this call. I had a question. I am a subcontractor for USAID in a small business. I've recently been furloughed in the last couple of weeks due to the stop work order. I've been following the court cases, and I know there's a temporary restraining order on the foreign aid freeze. There was guidance that came out that I know was sent to USAID, but what I've been hearing is that these are kind of superficial actions because USAID can't make meaningful change because they've already kind of dismantled the administrative and bureaucratic mechanisms for actually making payments and eliminated people who would make those payments. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, do you have any insight on what is going on in USAID and if this is a meaningful TRO that might start our funding back up? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I've been following this closely because one of my closest friends is also a subcontractor for USAID, and he was actually one of the first people who told me he went to make his payroll, and his funds were frozen. So what this latest court order has said is that they are required to make those payments to people. Part of it has been, as you said, it's been so dismantled and the people were frozen. But I think that but the court has ordered them to do it. So what I'd like to have you do, and anybody else who this has happened to, if you can call my office tomorrow and we can start up a constituent case for you, and we can start advocating for you to get your payments, because the court has ordered those payments to be made, so they should be made. And again, my office phone number is 303-844-4988. We can advocate for you to get that. And it's, I mean, I can't guarantee any. I mean, the problem is, like my friend Mark, he had his group had hired people in the country of Georgia, and they had to lay. So what they did by stopping those payments, it had this huge domino effect. All the contractors, then the subcontractors, then people around the world. The food programs in Africa and all this. And so you can't just flip a switch and turn it back on. But we're trying to get that money going back out to people. Joe?
Thank you so much. Congresswoman, our next caller is from James in Denver.
Hi, James.
Hi, thanks for taking the call.
You bet.
I'm wondering if our democratic process is working in terms of Elon Musk and his ability to relieve people of positions in government, and who is authorizing his power to do so, and what are we doing to fight back against programs that have already been mentioned that directly impact Americans and their safety, well-being, including education and consumers and travelers and things along those lines.
So, James, I do not believe that Elon Musk is legitimate, as I said earlier, and I think I think it's up to us to make our democratic process work. The lawsuits that I mentioned, many of whom we've gotten injunctions on to make the agency, to allow the agencies to do their work and to get the funding back. Those are working, but we need to keep pushing on that. And then in the congressional process, when we have the budget come up and when we have this funding resolution in the middle of March, we need to keep pushing for that. But there's a lawsuit, and this is a lawsuit I'm keeping a close eye on. This is the lawsuit that says, it's in front of Judge Chutkan, and it says that DOJ is not a legitimate agency because it was not authorized by Congress, and it doesn't have the authority to make these cuts, to eliminate agencies, or to access people's private financial data. The judge today, I think it was today or yesterday, she did not issue the temporary restraining order because she said she needed more evidence of harm. So I expect what's going to happen now with that case is they'll take evidence about how this is harming so many millions of Americans, and then she'll have the opportunity to act on that. And I believe we really need to push that because this is just out of control. It's out of control, and it's not American. Joe?
Thank you. Congresswoman, our next call is from Laura in Denver.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question, and thank you for having this call. I want to say that I appreciate you mentioning these really cruel and harmful attacks on the trans community, specifically trans youth. And I wanted to ask you two questions about that. One, I'd love to get your insights as to how the Dem party leadership, specifically in the House and the Senate, have prioritized this issue. I'm not hearing a lot from them, and I'm not hearing a lot of action from them from a legislative side. And I also want to know what we can do at a state level to pressure our hospitals to bring back the care that they were providing. And what can we, what relationship do you have with our governor to kind of help support these communities in our state.
So, Laura, thank you for that comment, and I will never waver in my support for trans individuals. And right now, people are really vilifying these folks, and I just, if you know anybody, in fact, I'm getting ready to meet with some parents in the next week or so. But if you know anybody who needs an advocate and a friend, tell them to call me, because I think that this is terribly, terribly wrong to single people out like this for hatred. The Democratic Party leadership feels the same way I do about trans kids, and one of the court cases, I'm trying to remember all the 74 court cases, but I believe one of the court cases did issue an injunction saying that they could not block this funding to hospitals. And I have both reached out to Anschutz and Denver Health to tell them that I think they need to provide care to everybody. And the care, this kind of care, it needs to be decided by the individuals, and if they're a minor, their parents and their doctors. Some of you know I'm the co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus in Congress, and it's the same thing as with any healthcare decisions people are making. You really don't want Elon Musk sitting in that room when you're making those healthcare decisions. And so we're going to continue to push on that. I don't know exactly what they're doing at the state level, but I'm happy to bring this up with the governor and others. Joe?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from
Joe? Hello?
Hello.
Joe? I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, sir.
Oh, this is Stephen from Denver.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi. So many of us, feel like we're fighting for our lives in so many ways on so many fronts, and that it appears to us that the Democrats aren't doing enough. And one of my biggest issues as a parent is climate change, and just curious, what your thinking is, what are plans and strategies, as well as the Democrats in general, in combating climate change. And then, one kind of related question about health and environment is, Trump's sort of dismantling of our public health infrastructure, especially internationally with the WHO, the CDC, and he lost by many analysis in 2020 because of his handling of COVID, and with bird flu looming and other possible epidemics or pandemics. I just don't understand the calculus unless it's a sort of dangerous or cynical ploy to shield the public from any knowledge of pandemics. So it's a two-parter for you.
Well, thank you I'm just writing that down. Thank you, Stephen, for those questions, and we all feel like we're fighting for our lives too. I will say what I said immediately after the election is I said, do not confuse our change of tactics for acquiescence, because the Democrats are fighting hard at every level, but we need help from our constituents too. In Congress, as I had said before, and you know this, the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And what that means in Colorado, because of a constitutional amendment passed many years ago, if somebody brings a bill up, it's required to come up at least for a hearing. In the U.S. House of Representatives, Speaker Johnson doesn't, even though they only have a majority of 1 to 3 votes, he doesn't have to bring any of our legislation up. So we have great legislation combating climate change. We have great legislation for renewables and everything else. One thing we did is we worked with the Biden administration to, and you know all the great legislation we did, which had huge investments for combating the climate crisis, the Build Back Better bill, the jobs bill, all those bills. They put billions of dollars into investments into renewable energy infrastructure and development, and those have all gone out the door. People are using those grants right now, and President Biden, before he left office, he made sure all that money went out the door so that Trump couldn't try to claw it back. But just because the Republicans control all of these three levers of government doesn't mean that we are not fighting, and that's what I meant. Is we're fighting at every level. So, for example, in the Energy and Commerce Committee, we have jurisdiction over climate in the Energy and Commerce Committee. The Republicans are going to try to make cuts to climate, to like you heard Trump said, drill baby drill. They're going to try to make changes from renewable energy. We are going to fight like hell against that. But we're also going to point out that many of these guys have huge renewable energy projects in their district because of the legislation that we passed and the money that we got out. They're going to be hearing from their business community that they want to have this money. So we're going to keep fighting on this every day, and we're going to keep, we're going to keep. If they come to us to fund the government, which they're going to have to, like they did the last 2 years, we're going to make sure we have our strong climate initiatives in there. We're going to keep speaking up. With respect to your question about health and environment, I am just as mystified as you are why they would cut like biomedical research at the National Institutes of Health, or why they would cut vaccine and drug development at the FDA. The advances that we have been incredible, and the American public strongly supports us on this. So number one, a court has ordered that all of those grants that were frozen by DOGE, those also have to be reinstated. That was one of the other court cases that we won. But as we go through with the budget and appropriations bills, I seriously doubt. I mean, I know a lot of Republicans who support biomedical research, and I've already been talking to them about what the heck do you think you're doing, and same thing with vaccines. So I mean, I think this is something where it's bipartisan. Americans can all get behind. Joe?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next caller is Richard from Denver.
Hey, Richard.
Hi, Diane. Thank you for all that you do. This is wonderful. You've covered a lot of my questions, so I'll take a little different twist to it. The Inflation Reduction Act, of course, sent a lot of money to the red states, and it's been, from what I hear, even though the money's been put out there, that Trump is trying to claw some of it back. And what my first part of the question is, at what point does the Republican Party recognize the fact that their bread and butter comes from their constituency, and that their constituency is being hurt by clawing back monies of projects and funds that are logically going to the red states? The second part of the question is, at what point is there a bipartisan, that there are some Republicans that are definitely that have integrity and that value bipartisan dialogue? At what point is there sufficient support coming out of the GOP to potentially take on something as strong as an impeachment or some kind of action that would stop Elon Musk. And it strikes me that Elon Musk is doing no better than what Menendez did in terms of taking funds through bribery that got him indicted. At what point does Elon Musk get indicted for fraud for what he's doing? And isn't there a stronger action that can be taken against Elon Musk? So it's really a two-part question.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. And you're right. That's what I was referring to, all of the dollars that went out to red states and every place for renewable energy projects and other projects. And a lot of that Trump tried to claw back. One of the most illuminating ones was when, remember, they tried to freeze USAID, and they didn't realize, because they're all like 20 years old over there at Doge, they didn't realize that USAID included food assistance for that is coming from U.S. farmers who are all in red states. And when that money got frozen, then they lost millions of dollars in food assistance that was going abroad. And they started screaming right away. Trump tried to exempt them, but then of course the courts intervened, and now all USAID money is supposed to be reinstated. This is probably going to be the last question because we're almost at our hour, but it's a really, actually, Richard, it's a really good place for reflection. Is what is the matter with these Republicans? Because they are just sitting there letting all of this happen to their constituents. And I keep asking, and by the way, I'm not giving them any slack either. I work so much in a bipartisan way on health care legislation and energy legislation, and I have many, many friends in the Republican caucus, and I can't believe that they're not standing up for the authority of Congress under Article 1 of the Constitution. They're just, I guess, they're so afraid of Donald Trump, or they're just, or they have this MAGA agenda. But people who I respect generally and who I know well are doing nothing. And I and many of my colleagues have started saying to them, what are you doing? Why are you just sitting there letting Elon Musk run rampant over our budget? And it's going to catch up with them, because their constituents don't want this any more than my constituents do. And so, and as I told you, Richard, we have the Republicans have the slimmest majority in the House than they have had than over 100 years. And so if they want to actually do productive legislation, they're going to have to come to the Democrats, because they have about 28 or 50 MAGA Republicans who don't think we should have a federal government for real. They don't think we should have a federal government. So the regular Republicans are going to have to come to us as soon as March 14th, and we're not going to give in. We're going to stand up for things like the independence of Congress and the budget that we did. We're going to tell them that they cannot give this authority to Musk, and we'll see what happens. But we're standing firm, and I don't think people, it's been so much chaos, and that was Trump's intent. Flood the zone. It was his intent to have this chaos, but people need to stand together against this, not start infighting among us. Because if, as I said earlier, if the public stands up like they did at the rallies this weekend, if the courts stand up for our Constitution, and if Congress people stand up, and senators and also our state elected officials, if we all stand together, I think this is going to be one of the biggest constitutional challenges we've ever had. But ultimately, I think we can prevail. But we all have to work together, and we cannot be blaming each other. I'll just tell you all, I mean, some of you have known me for a long time. I've been in Congress for a long time. I don't take any crap, and I'm using every lever that I have, and I know you are too. So let's keep fighting this together. We're going to fight in the courts, we're going to fight in the Congress, and we're going to, march, and of course everything peaceful. But I think if we stand up, then we will prevail. Elon Musk, even now, is, if you look at public opinion polling, he is very, very unpopular. And people did not sign. I mean, I don't know why they signed up for Donald Trump, but they surely did not sign up for Elon Musk. And at some point, Donald Trump, he will see this, and I think he'll cut him loose. And I think once we get some real prosecutors back, they need to look and see about the legal issues. So anyway, I continue to have faith. I continue to fight hard, and I think we all need to do it. I'm going to once again say to everybody that you should you should get my newsletter, because I will have updates there all the time. And you should look at the videos, and you should also look at the Know Your Rights section on my website, DeGette.house.gov, 303-844-4988. Thanks, everybody. Stay strong, and also let me know what's going on out there. Thanks. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for tonight's discussion, and thank you so much to all of our callers who participated. We appreciate your time tonight and for voicing your concerns. And if at the end of this call you will stay on the line to leave a voicemail, our staff will return your concern. Thank you so much, and have a good night, everybody.